It's been a long time for Battlefield, but the Operations game mode is finally back. Well, sort of. Battlefield 6 just got a new event called Operation Augur that stitches together Season 2's new maps, Contaminated and Hagental Base, into a mini operation. Attackers attempt to push the defending team back to their HQ sector with 3 rounds of tickets per map, and it's actually quite good, although there are some pretty stark differences there. There's also some leaked content to cover, so let's get into all of it. So after spending the morning playing several matches of Operation Augur, I think my main takeaway is that DICE have yet again delivered something extremely cool, but also much more limited than I think anybody wants it to be. I'm a pretty big fan of Battlefield 1's Operations mode. I think it was one of DICE's strongest new game modes that they've done, I don't know, over the past decade or so. And combining that mode with Battlefield 6's 2 new maps, which are fantastic, seems like an easy slam dunk. The balance, especially on the first map Contaminated, is, well, very team dependent, which is definitely a characteristic of Operations, or even Breakthrough for that matter. If you have a bad team as the attackers that refuse to push or don't have the right vehicle support needed to break the defender's stronghold, well, you're just simply not going to get through. But when you do have a good team, or you're on defense and the attackers are really putting up a fight, this is some of the best gameplay I've had in Battlefield 6. Whether I was pushing the objective with an aggressive assault kit, or holding the line with an LMG, or being a useless sniper racking up headshot kills from the HQ, I was having an absolute blast. The limited vehicles plus the extended match time, thanks to having those 3 waves of reinforcements, really scratches that Operations itch, making it feel like a much bigger ordeal than your typical Breakthrough round. And it puts you so much more in touch with the actual win-loss scenario. You start to pay attention to it more and actually care whether or not you're pushing through. Now, one thing that everyone might not be super happy about is that this mode is limited to 48 players instead of 64, but I didn't feel like more players would have actually benefited in this situation. Both teams are very focused and have a pretty limited play area, so a full 64-player lobby would have probably been chaos. I have no doubt that DICE tested this scenario and came away with a 48-player count based on that. And despite the smaller player count, well, the main difference between this and the traditional Operations mode is, well, there's no real comeback mechanic for the attackers. Each wave, when you reset your tickets, the team gets access to the same spawn points and vehicles. So if you lost in round 1, well, unless your team really locks in and learns from their previous mistakes, well, there's a good chance that you're going to lose in round 2 and even 3. Whereas in Battlefield 1, the losing team would get a behemoth vehicle to try and even things out. And they often at least got you a few new capture points, so it still made it feel like there was a chance for you to come back. And in some maps they were arguably overpowered, but not having any sort of bonuses for round 2 and 3 feels a bit off for this mode. Just something to help break through the defenders for at least one sector would be nice. As it currently stands, both teams get a selection of ground vehicles like Jeeps, ATVs, and Bradleys depending on the sector. On Hagental Base, both teams get a minigun, which is about as useful as a blindfold. It also feels like the playable area on Contaminated, especially in the first sector, is quite narrow. The side rats offer basically no cover and they're within striking distance of the defender's front line, so getting to the objective can be just a brute force operation here. It feels like maybe a little more cover would help out in this specific situation. Operation Augur also feels really great for players looking to grind out weapon unlocks and stuff, just because the consistency and intensity of the combat is absolutely there. And in my opinion, this is one of the best added modes so far. But sadly, the event is a limited time mode available exclusively on just the current season's new map. So even though the mode is great, repeating it over and over on the exact same 2 maps and getting the exact same flanking options and exact same gameplay, it's just gonna get a little boring no matter what. I was having a ton of fun at first, but the familiarity of the maps certainly started to wear on, and I can only imagine trying to hop into this new content and get days worth of gameplay out of it. I feel like it's kind of the same story that we've been getting with the rest of Battlefield 6's content rollout. They do it in these tiny little dollops, and then you're supposed to focus all of your attention on just a really small amount of content for a longer period of time. It just doesn't feel like the right approach. Now, outside of the mode, there's actually a decent patch for the game. The biggest new gameplay item besides Operation Augur is the LTV, which is a NATO support vehicle with squad spawn functionality plus health and ammo resupply. There's also a new melee weapon, the Ripper 14-inch, tied to the Hunter-Prey bonus path. And for the Battle Royale, the new Hazmat Breacher training path gives Assault players a breaching dart launcher that uses VL smoke, along with better protection from the gas effects. Probably, though, the most interesting balance change is the defibrillator rework. It now uses a charge system with 3 charges, and revives restore between 50 and 100 health depending on how long you charge it, and a fully charged zap can once again kill an enemy in one hit. DICE is clearly trying to stop the chain revives from being sort of a brainless mechanic, while still preserving those clutch medic moments. And honestly, I think that sounds like a pretty healthy change for the general gameplay flow. That said, I had no problem chaining together 3 revives in a few seconds, so I don't think these changes are going to drastically affect the overall gameplay. Now, when it comes to Season 3, DICE have been pretty quiet about what to expect, but that hasn't stopped leakers from finding some interesting things. First up, we're getting at least 2 maps with Season 3, the remake of Golmud Railway and Plaza, which is apparently a spiritual successor to Battlefield 3's Grand Bazaar. There's a third map called Isolated that is also leaked, but that's most likely a new area on the Red Sec Battle Royale map. Now, Golmud Railway has been in testing on Battlefield Labs recently, and despite saying that they aren't reducing the map's size, it does look like the playable area has been reduced. An image comparing the original version of the map and the remake shows that the areas on the perimeter of the map have been made out of bounds. These areas were mostly empty space that players didn't use anyway, so it doesn't really look like a major reduction in scale. I will say though that I am sort of expecting the map to feel like the Operation Firestorm remake, where DICE sort of rebuilt the map with a lot of additional cover that changed a lot of the flow and kind of feeling of the map to a degree. It improved it in some regards and sort of took away some of the specialness in others, so I'm hoping they don't do the exact same thing here, but I have a feeling we're going to get something similar. That said, I was never a huge fan of Golmud Railway in the first place, so if they change it up, maybe I'll actually prefer the new one. There's also 4 new guns that have been data mined for Season 3, the L15A3 sniper rifle, the RPK-74 LMG, the M16A3 coming back, and the PP-19. This isn't much to go on in terms of how these guns will perform or be balanced out for the existing guns, but it's nice to see a franchise staple like the M16 making a big comeback. As for timing of all of this content, speculation suggests that Season 3 will begin shortly after around May 12th, which is when Season 2 ends. DICE, of course, may delay or extend Season 2 if there's any major issues with that content. Overall, it doesn't really seem like DICE is changing their game plan or their content production pipeline, rather. It doesn't appear we're on track to start getting a lot more new maps or a lot more new content, but instead just kind of maintain the current pace. And in DICE's defense, the player count for Battlefield 6 has been better than any previous Battlefield game this far after launch, so despite there being some complaints, myself included there, about the quantity of content rolling out, the player base seems quite healthy. As for large maps, Golmud Railway seems like it's supposed to scratch that itch, although it's one of my least favorite large maps from the franchise's past, so if they're going to do a remake, I got 10 other maps that I would rather have before this one. And as far as that Grand Bazaar spiritual successor, well, I always loved Grand Bazaar. I thought it had a fantastic layout, a lot of good flanking routes, and just a really solid urban combat map. That said, it's still very similar to some of the maps that are currently in the BF6 lineup, so I'm not sure it's going to bring all that much variety in terms of gameplay, but I'm curious to see what DICE deliver. What do you guys think of this latest update? What do you think of this sort of mini operations game mode? Would you like to see it rolled out to more maps down the road? Sometimes DICE does this, and if there's a big enough request from the community, some of these smaller modes can become bigger modes over time. Up next, check out this video on 10 times that DICE has predicted the future with kind of alarming levels of accuracy. It's pretty wild. You don't want to miss it. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.